have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roll with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait to next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.
Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. This is episode 125, and as always, it is presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. And again, joining me every week, Major Caldwell back in here with me. But today, we welcome a true colossus of content, the boss of the fantasy underworld, the Podfather himself, Matt Kelley. How you doing, Matt?
Content colossus, thank you.
Well, I have to admit it here right now. When I go to my fantasy analysis here, especially when we talk about this NFL draft, because we're going to talk a lot of rookies here, we're going to talk about draft prospects. One of my go-to sites is that player profile site that you've put together there. I mean, it's one of those true one-stop shop for all your draft needs, your fantasy football needs, your player comps, you name it, you've got it over there.
Thanks, buddy. I mean, it's what we try to do. I was frustrated many years ago that this data was all, not in one place, right? It needed to be unified. It was hard to pull it all together using spreadsheets. And I was podcasting, and I was like, I need a tool to help me podcast so I can have all this up on the screen and easily available and accessible. So it's basically a site that was built for fantasy podcasters. So that's probably why you like it.
Well, it really does. Like, I mean, I'm in a series here right now. I do my NFL draft prospect profiles right now. And I do reference the player profiler for those speed scores, those burst scores, because I think those are all important parts of when you're analyzing these prospects right now. I mean, there is a bigger picture. I mean, you got your film guys, you got your analytics guys. I really do believe in a combination of the two. And I'm not smart enough to put these things together myself. So I have to go to playerprofiler.com just to kind of give me that good information that I need when I share.
We have the highlights too. We have their, their counting stats, more of their like roll up metrics, like it's like dominator rating, college target shares, things of that nature, as well as the athletic testing. But instead of having to go through all the athletic metrics and like try to parse them together, we just say, hey, you know what? Take the 3-cone, take the shuttle, put them together. There's your agility score. Take the broad jump, take the vertical jump, put them together. There's your burst score. Just makes it a little bit easier to digest. And you can also see comps play out. Like a lot of times you look at a player and you're like, oh man, that guy's profile looks a lot like that guy's profile. And then you're not surprised when, say, Alec Pierce comps to Dante Moncrief and Cody Latimer and all these guys. You're like, well, he does look really similar to those guys, both in production and athleticism and size and all these things. And then you look at the data come out of it. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Justin Hunter, guys like that. There it is, right there. There are the comps. Boom, right there in front of you. So, that's Alec Pierce is an interesting guy.
But speaking of Alec, let's get into some of these rookies here. I always look forward to hearing how these players kind of stack up in your eyes here. Let's give us your top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs, top 5 receivers.
Well, quarterback-wise, it starts and ends with Malik Willis. I don't think that's news, right? And I just talked to Thor Nystrom on my podcast from NBC Sports Edge, and he gave me a little bit of interesting background information on why Bo Nix was chosen over Malik Willis, that it was political, that there were family ties, and that essentially that Malik Willis got completely screwed in that process. And that, especially for a team like Auburn, a team that needs to be gritty, needs to make the right decisions, can't make luxury picks when it comes to recruiting and player personnel management when you're going up against Alabama every year. So for them to make that kind of catastrophic blunder, especially when you're watching the the spring game and seeing Willis outplay Nix in a big way, and then to see them start Nix, it's just like it's a head scratcher, and they can't afford to do that. And then sure enough, Nix washes out. Malik Willis is going to be the first quarterback taken. And when you actually look at Malik Willis's pro style throws, where he's out of structure a lot, but when he's throwing to the sideline, when he's throwing down the field, the guy was completing at a high rate, even without any NFL level players supporting him at all at Liberty. So there's actually a lot there to explain away some of the flaws that are perceived with Malik Willis's game. And there's some reasons to focus on the positives. And that was really the case that Thor made very well on the Player Profiler podcast. And so for that reason, I feel even better posting up Malik Willis at the QB1 spot than I did before. Then the question becomes
real quick
Yeah.
before you go to your next one. At the beginning of the offseason, or the draft, profile, the combine type stuff, was Willis, where did he rank right after the season for you? And like, when did he move up to 1?
Well, he was at QB2. We had Pickett to start the process, and then his hand size came in, and then it was over.
Gotcha.
Right. So he had the little baby hands, right? Where if we were talking about like, well, he's not going to go to he's not going to the draft. And then he had a wordsmithed press release from his agent about why he's not going to the draft.
Right.
That was like, he has opted not to go to the draft. What does that mean? Was he ever invited? And so the big question is, the big, a sports journalism job of the day is to go out and try to figure out, was Pickett even invited? And that's not clear. It's not clear, and it's not clear he's going in the first round anymore. So I think there's a very high probability he drops out of the first round because he didn't break out until his last year. If it wasn't for COVID, he might be like a day 3 pick that's buried on some depth chart in the NFL somewhere, and we're not even talking about him ever, right? So I understand how that happens, and it's all about a Bayesian process, where as new information comes in, you adjust and adjust and adjust. And so he's the one that's sliding down, and a guy like Matt Corral's moving up, and it makes sense. Matt Corral was invited to the draft. Matt Corral, when all these teams are leaking their preferences and their boards, right? So we hear, oh, Carolina doesn't have Pickett in their top 3, and they don't have him graded as a first round caliber quarterback. Like, they're much more likely to go Corral in the top 10. But I don't think Willis even makes it to Carolina. Carolina is a popular destination, people for mocking Willis and where he ends up. Nah, I think someone's going to jump up in the top 3, just like Trey Lance and Zach Wilson last year. Someone's going to jump up and draft him in the top 5. And then probably Corral goes to Carolina, goes somewhere between the 5 and 10 spot. And then it's just a big question mark of what happens, because you have that firewall, like that Pickett firewall with Pittsburgh. And Cody Carpentier on our team believes that Pittsburgh's actually going to push the button on Ritter, not Pickett. And then all of a sudden, Pickett goes into free fall. His agent's worrying about it. His parents are worried about it. They don't want to be Aaron Rodgers in the green room where there's literally no one else there except them and a cameraman. And it's really embarrassing. Yep. So you don't want that. So you just want to be home. And he might have basically a Jalen Hurts draft experience where he ends up in the mid-second round. And he still ends up maybe playing really well. He does have mobility. He did have that incredible season last year. There are reasons to think that he could be Ryan Tannehill. But I'm going to be fascinated to see where he goes. I think in terms of prop betting, take the under on Pickett. I think that's the easiest prop bet on the board right now, the most obvious one. And I could see if there's some prop bets where you could take for big odds, Howell going before Pickett, that would be very interesting, because I think that's where Detroit's head is at. Why would we throw a dart on a quarterback in a weak quarterback class at 2 when we can either trade down or we can get an elite edge rusher and then potentially get who ends up being the best quarterback in the class 3 years from now, Sam Howell, at 32. So that's also in play. So there's a bunch of interesting things going on with the quarterback position, and it's just all very fluid behind Malik Willis, depending on what happens in the draft. But certainly Corral moving up, Pickett moving down.
I don't think you could have said that any better, because I'm looking at my board and Pickett, I've dropped him to 5. There's something about him I just can't get behind. Maybe it's a small hand size. Size does matter when it comes to the NFL.
Listen, you can't spin the ball as fast, and you can't push the ball out into space with as much velocity as surface area between the ball and your hands goes down. If you have less surface area, then you can't generate, especially the spin rate on the ball, that guys with big hands can. It's not a guarantee. Big hands doesn't mean you can throw the ball hard. I mean, look at Ritter. He has 10-inch hands, and he's Alex Smith. The best Franken comp in this draft is Alex Smith meets Marcus Mariota. That's the dead ringer for Desmond Ritter.
Yeah.
I've seen that one thing on Twitter. There's one fight. Someone posted there, what does Malik Willis do better than Desmond Ritter? And he went back and forth. Then all of a sudden Thor steps in. He goes, he throws the ball and he runs it better. And that was like,
how about everything?
That was the end of the conversation. He throws it and he runs it, period. End of discussion.
What? Yeah, that's not even a thing, man. Because the thing is, like, the thing that makes Ritter an interesting first rounder is this newfound speed that we didn't know he had. I don't think anyone knew he had running, 4.5, Justin Fields level speed. Get the hell out of here. Who saw that? This guy, his face too. He has a very old face. He looks like he's been working in construction for 40 years.
Like Andre Reed right now. That's what he looks like. He looks like Andre Reed.
It's nuts. It's nuts. This guy's lived a hard life, this Desmond Ritter. Oh my God, man. In the mine or something. I don't know. He has black lung and he's running a 4.5. Good for him, dude. But yeah, so the 40 time is really what's buoying him at this point. Otherwise, didn't beat any of the elite competition that he moved up to play, face planted against the on the big stages, and doesn't have arm talent. That was sort of confirmed at the Senior Bowl. So, we have a ton of flawed prospects with these quarterbacks, and I had Willis being more flawed before talking to Thor. After talking to Thor, I feel like he's a less flawed prospect, and I'd be more willing, like if I'm Detroit, for example, to push the button. I think it's 50-50 whether or not they should. It just kind of depends on, do they think they can get Stroud next year? Do they think that they can get Young? If so, then don't. But my worry is that they're rebuilding that team so well and so meticulously. And I just love Brad Holmes. I think he's doing an awesome job. Super underrated. And the worry is that they're too good next year or this year coming up, and they don't get the quarterback they want. So if that's a risk at all, right? Because there's going to be good edge and there's going to be good offensive linemen available at 32 and available again at 34. Like on our latest mock 5.0 from Cody Carpentier on playerprofiler.com, he has David Ajabo making it to Detroit. So if you can get Ajabo, why would you go Thibodeau? Right? Just so if you think about it, you could either have, what would you guys rather have? Would you rather have Thibodeau and Pickett or Willis and Ojabo? I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm definitely Ojabo. You got a top 5, top 7 prospect right there. If it wasn't for that Achilles injury, which was absolutely crushing for him, you got yourself a top 10 prospect. So if you get 2 top 10 prospects,
that's what I'm saying.
Ojabo, who may
that's
not
what
play,
I'm saying. And then, you got Linderbaum, you got Tariq Woolen, you got Boy Mafe. I probably butchered his name.
You're killing these names, though. You're doing a good job.
Was that good?
Yeah, I think so. I think you got it.
Oh shit. Okay.
I set the bar very low when it comes to names.
All right.
On here,
So
right?
yeah,
I make sure
there's
everyone-
just some
Yeah.
sick options, man. And you know, guys are gonna fall. Trent McDuffie could fall. You know, Elam could fall. So yeah, I think that they could easily use those pick 32 and 34 to bolster the defense to go edge and corner and go Willis at 2. I'm warmed up to that tactic for them recently, just because I think that they may be able to put this rebuild on overdrive just because Holmes has done such a good job.
I think one of the things that's low key thought here, if they get Ojabo there at 32, it's basically going to be a redshirt year for him in the National Football League, which means that's going to help them tank for next season, which increases the Bryce Young, the CJ Stroud in the whole thing there. So
if they don't go Willis,
process.
yeah, I mean, what Detroit could do, I'm most excited to see Detroit. What they could do in this draft, especially if they decide not to go Willis, what they could do, just creating one of the best sort of teams at the point of attack in the league in terms of edge, tackle play. They could just go get everybody. They could get Evan Neal and Ojabo and Woolen or McDuffie. I mean, it could be just a sick haul.
And that's not even thinking they could trade back. That number 3, if someone really wants Malik Willis, that's going to cost you a couple more first round
trade
picks.
Back into the 2023 draft, bro. Why not? You got these other picks coming up, and you know you got incredible depth at line and incredible depth at edge, especially. I mean, it's not just tackle; it's across the board. I mean, the idea that you can get Charles Cross in the teens is crazy, but you can this year. That's just how deep the class is at that position. And then that also ends up pushing the other players, the Zion Johnsons down, the interior offensive linemen down, like Linderbaum. And then you get all these edge rushers. Oh my God. Like that's the place. Like what I like to say to people is evaluate the groups within the class, the position groups, and then focus on the strong ones, focus on the strength, right? If you can get Evan Neal, who's the best of what is an awesome class of tackles, go ahead and do that.
You gotta grab them, yeah.
Right? If you can get, or you can get like the best guy that slips because of injury or whatever, medicals in Ojabo, do that too, right? If you can get the guy that runs the 4.22 in Tariq Woolen, do that, right? Nakobe Dean, do that, right? They also have pick 40. It's crazy.
Yeah. They can change the trajectory of that whole franchise with this draft. So yeah, I'm with you.
Incredible. So you get, if you hit on these guys, that's the danger. You hit on these guys, suddenly you can't get the quarterback you wanted next year. Damn it.
Just roll with Goff. Let it roll. Let's see what happens.
Goff. See what happens. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
real quick
now
here.
I'm 50-50. Now I'm 50-50. I think that Malik Willis is a 50% chance. Okay, so I'm not 50-50 on the Lions. I'm 50-50 on this. I think it's 50-50 he goes at 2. And then 50-50 from there, whether the Lions trade it or not. So then I think it's a 25% chance the Lions go Willis.
But what about this? You build that team that you're saying with all these rookies and don't do anything with the quarterback. And the way we had this quarterback carousel this year, or this offseason, I think they're going to repeat that next season so they can pick someone up in free agency if they really had to, you know?
See that you're thinking that's what I normally think. That's what I've been thinking this whole time, was that we're going to look up and it's going to be the NFC North champions, Detroit Lions,
right?
With one of the most stocked teams. And the further you can push out that quarterback signing, that rookie quarterback, the more of those rookie contract years you get to enjoy.
Exactly.
But the rumors are really strong right now that they're going to try to have their cake and eat it too by going Howell at 32.
It's not. Yeah.
So they can get the 5th-year option. They'll have him under team control for 7 years. And they get some upside in that he's the youngest quarterback in the class. He had an awesome year. He and Corral are very similar.
Right.
I mean, you talk about similar prospects. I don't know how far you have to go back to find two guys that are that similar, where really, I mean, you're splitting hairs. The difference really is the athleticism, where Corral is clearly across the board a better athlete than Howell, and has, I think, some of those leadership intangibles. I think that's the difference between a guy going at 10 versus 30, is those two traits. But yeah, I like those. I like those three guys. I think that that Pickett's a siren song for production. I think that Desmond Ritter's a siren song on athleticism.
Matt, do we have time to run through the running backs and receivers,
Absolutely.
or do we go
Absolutely. Let's talk your top 5 running backs. Let's talk more in depth on that number 3 guy that you have. Just kind of rank them off real quick.
Well, I think everybody has Hall and Walker 1, 2. I think most people have Hall at 1 because in fantasy football, most leagues are PPR leagues. Hall's much stronger receiver, at least what he's shown. Although I will say Walker looked good catching, he looked good at the combine, at least catching passes, and certainly no one's putting in more effort than Walker. So I love Walker has that alpha dog mentality where he wants to be the best and he carries himself like he is. And I think that's very important. Certainly that's the anti Isaiah Spiller, right? So you like that. Whereas, Isaiah Spiller ducking the combine 40, shrinking from the moment, being the beta running back on his own team, all these things, right? So I'm very interested to see how the NFL punishes Isaiah Spiller for basically being so underwhelming throughout the process, and how much it rewards Walker, right? Because coming in, they were about equivalent. For a lot of people, it was one or the other at RB2. Now it's shaken out where fantasy gamers are like, okay, it's definitely Walker. And I'm not as concerned about the receiving for Walker. A lot of running backs throughout history, especially those in these Big Ten offenses, run-centric, he can only have so many touches, like Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin. It's not like he's going to catch a ton of passes, right? They have him there for a reason to run the ball.
Right.
So this isn't one of these spread attacks. This isn't one of he's out in space all the time. I think is going to be perfectly Melvin Gordon level competent in the passing game. So I'm all in on Kenneth Walker. And process-wise, I'm not even entertaining anyone else other than Walker and Hall at the 101 and 102 in single quarterback dynasty rookie drafts, because you need to get these early young stud running backs through the door for your dynasty league team. They're impossible to trade for. Ask someone to go try to trade for Jonathan Taylor and see how far you get. They're impossible to trade for. You can't get them. By the time anyone wants to trade a running back, it's Ezekiel Elliott, and the guy's, clearly dusty. So trading for an all-purpose stud running back who's not dusty in dynasty is one of the hardest, most impossible tasks. So the answer is just get them when they're in the rookie draft and be done with it. It's not like seasonal leagues. Like this is I think a soapbox that I stand on a lot, but it's different. Zero RB doesn't work in dynasty because you can't go to the waiver wire and just pick up Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert's rostered, bro. All these guys are rostered. The best you're going to do is like a Darrell Williams, maybe, right? If you need a running back, and like there's this 1 week window where you can maybe get that guy if you have enough fab and it's a different, completely different thing when you're rostering 30 guys for their careers, as opposed to a seasonal league where you roster 18 guys and all these great running backs are always available on the waiver wire every week, heading into the next matchup where there's been an injury. Great. Go push the button. Go start Herbert this week. Enjoy your zero RB strategy in seasonal leagues. Congratulations. Who fucking cares?
And that's why I love Dynasty.
Right? Dynasty is a completely different thing. And if you're at the 101 or the 102 and you're not pushing the button on Hall and Walker, you're doing it wrong.
Well, so let's get to this third back that I think the show, we can spend an hour on this because I think we're all going to kind of butt heads a little bit here, but let's get to your 3 real quick.
So if you go to our rankings on Player Profiler, you're going to see Rashaad White is there. It's not something that we feel great about because this class falls away after the top 2. It's not us, it's the class. Okay. Right. It's just like the quarterbacks after Malik Willis. It's not us, it's the class, guys. Okay. Don't feel bad. You got to pick somebody. Super flawed players after Walker. But the guy that's the most box stuffing, sort of David Johnson level talent, size, athleticism, receiving skills is Rashaad White. The reason why it's so fragile and fungible is because he's not showing up in mock drafts in the top 100. And that's just, if he falls out of the day 2 zone, screw it, man. Like, it sucks. So what could easily happen? We have Zamir White pretty close, because what could happen is Zamir White goes second round. There's a chance, it's a low chance, but there's a chance Zamir White's the first running back drafted, because he's, you know, this happens. Some of these scouts are really anchored into what guys were in high school.
Right.
So you have, it's going to take like really concerning medicals to get them off a Justin Ross or a Kevin Harris. And they are now. They're now off Kevin Harris. I think that's a mistake. I'm on Kevin Harris. But they're off him, and that's fine. Zamir White proved that his knees are fine now. So they're on Zamir White. Cool, right? He runs a 4.4. I get it. Like, he has explosive between the tackles ability. That's a valuable trait. And especially, like I said, in Dynasty, you need this depth. You need these guys that could be RB2s in the league with straight line speed between the tackles. It's awesome. You have to respect it.
When did Spiller just fall off the face of the earth? When did that happen? Because, during the season, Spiller to me looked like, I think it was those top 3. It was Hall, Walker, and Spiller. And then all of a sudden, he's just not even in the equation.
Because, there's a couple things. So there's a self-fulfilling prophecy with his athleticism. Athleticism is not a 1-for-1 input factor, because it at this point in the process, we can double count it. When a guy face plants like Kyron Williams, it not only hurts his ability to break out in the league because he's not fast enough, it also then hurts his draft capital. So it has this accelerating effect down the board where he goes from 5 to 15 to 25. See, that's what can happen when you go from second round to 4th round to 7th round UDFA, which is the Kyron Williams trajectory. It's not that bad with Isaiah Spiller. He started at a higher place. He's not nearly as fragile. He's not the sub-athlete that Kyron Williams was, but he's been disappointing throughout the process. The interviews didn't go well at the combine. He doesn't seem to have that mentality that the Kenneth Walker brings, and it's tough. Like, I feel bad for him. If you're compared to Kenneth Walker, who wants it as bad as any running backs ever wanted it,
Right.
like ever, it's tough to be in that draft class, and you're compared against that guy. But it is what it is, and if you're going to be meek in the interview process, and you're going to bounce around when you're actually playing, and you're going to be significantly less efficient than some of these other running backs on your own team against similar competition, Big 12, suddenly, all of a sudden, like for us, the red flags just start stacking up. Already, I hated the fact that he was a Big 12 running back. So I'm already, okay, like, now what? And it's like, we did Noah Hills did an in-depth analysis on Spiller for our site early, and didn't love any of the peripherals on him, especially when compared to the other running backs on that team, to try to create some sort of apples to apples comparison for how good he is. And I shrugged my shoulders, because my attitude is, that this guy's going second round and he's athletic, then whatever, right? He's a Spiller. I remember CJ Spiller. He was super explosive. If you see anything close to CJ Spiller's athleticism, and he's going in the second round, if you don't like his running style or you don't like some of his peripheral metrics, you know what? I'm still going to push the button on that guy at the RB3 spot all day long. But then he's ducking the 40.
Right.
And then he's not fast. And I'm like, oh, now I understand what's going on. Where it's kind of like he's just trying to get through it, right? He's at the end of a race and you're just trying to get to the finish line before a couple of the runners behind you pass you. And you're just on fumes. You're just trying to get there. You're just trying to please just get me into day 2. Please draft me. Now it's like, hopefully I go in the 3rd round. Right. And it's just like at this point, it's a hope and a prayer for him that he can just get drafted, get the necessary draft capital, and then he'll be fine. Like, I'm sure he'll be fine. Like, he'll be good enough, right? To have, because it's a lowish bar, man. David Montgomery's been a RB top 25 running back in Dynasty for how long?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I always look at that and go, well, he had the 3rd round capital. He had the pedigree coming in. He wasn't as athletic as he was sold to be. He was a sort of a quiet guy, didn't have some of these alpha mentals.
Right.
And he's been fine. You know, he was great. He was a league winner a couple of years ago in the second half of the season. So that's all in play for Spiller. But it also could go badly for him, right? He could fall to the 4th round. He could slip into the 5th round, and everyone's wondering, like, this always happens. This always happens where the guy on Kuiper's board that should have gone 2 rounds ago is still around, and everyone's like, well, who's Kuiper talking to? What happened? And this happens to fantasy gamers sometimes. We're anchored, right? We're anchored into our pre-draft assessment or pre-process assessment on like a Justin Ross. And it's like, you know what, guys? I don't think Justin Ross is ever going to be healthy again. And it's never going to happen. And that's just what it is. I remember him at Clemson a couple of years ago with Trevor Lawrence, and he looked great, but he's not that guy anymore. And it just may be that Spiller was never that guy he was sold to be. So we have him in this weird purgatory where he's behind these guys that have really moved up in the process, and he's ahead of everybody else. But I'll tell you, you know, if my, you know, entire family fortune was at stake and it was, you know, I had to make the right decision. You know, if you had similar factors, like things that were boosting a guy up that weren't necessarily based on his production or athleticism, I'd probably go Brian Robinson over Isaiah Spiller if I was in a rookie draft right now. I'm not lying. I'm not kidding.
I don't hate that. I've been a big fan of Brian Robinson, a guy who's waited his turn, bided his time, sat behind that running back clinic there that's been coming out of Alabama, and they're coming and doing it successfully when given that opportunity to do so. Now, you mentioned Justin Ross. Obviously, he's not going to be in your top 5 wide receivers, but quickly, for 30 seconds or so, just kind of run down that list of your top 5 wide receivers for the 2022 NFL.
So, yeah, that's an easy one. I mean, everyone has the same top 5 at this point. Some people are kind of trying to push Pickens in there. I'm not pushing Pickens in there or Sky Moore. I'm not doing that. The NFL has made it pretty clear that it's Wilson, Burks, you know, Williams, London, Olave, that mix of guys, and it's kind of fluid. And I'm down with that. Like, those are the guys going to go in the 1st round. Dotson might go in the 1st round, but Dotson's a senior. He's not an early declare. So get the hell out of here. Right. Like,
yep.
Only one guy, right? You don't want to have too many seniors in your top 5. I'll put Olave in there. He'll be my one guy, my one representative from the senior group, and that's it. Get out of here. And then in terms of like who has N'Keal Harry risk, there's 2 of those guys. It's Burks and London. And it's a Harry Potter, Tom Riddle situation where one can't break out until the other one busts. Right? They can't both exist at the same time in the world for very long. So you have to make a decision. The number of 1,000-yard receivers that ever comes out of the 1st round is actually a pretty low percentage. It's crazy. And now there's been bad draft classes, right? 2015, 2016. You know, we've lived through the Doxson, Treadwell, Coleman, right? You know, of course, that's not this class. It's better than that. But yeah, it's very. I think that London was incredibly productive. I watched the Notre Dame game. He's awesome, right? He's clearly awesome. And it's interesting that he played exclusively at X, where they moved Burks all around the formation. Which is better? I don't know. Is it? It's a skill to always win without having to be schemed, but it's also nice to have that versatility of being able to move around the formation. Which is better? I don't know. I know a lot of these guys, both these guys, Burks and London, they're catching a lot of screen passes, right? They're not separating much down the field.
Right.
They're doing a lot of bully ball stuff, and that stuff's not working as well in the NFL as it used to. When you could see N'Keal Harry being much more productive 10 years ago. So I'm going to go with Burks just because at this point, London ducking the 40 when he was healthy is a red flag, just like Pickett ducking the draft. Everyone's ducking something, right? Spiller's ducking the 40 at the combine. So I know that his agents are whispering in his ear, like, don't worry, you got this. You're only going to hurt yourself. Don't be an idiot, right? Guess who else was whispering that in his ear? Jamar Chase's agent was whispering that. And what did Jamar Chase do? He ran. He worked his ass off in Texas. If you guys remember, but Texas actually was one of the only places where they were even allowed to work out. Back in the peak
COVID
pandemic days, peak pandemic days. So they were all in Texas working out, and apparently Jamar Chase was the hardest worker of all of them, even though everyone told me he was going to be a top 10 pick and it was already written in stone, right? The prophecy was already written, right? So that's a different animal, dude. That's more of a Kenneth Walker mindset than what we're dealing with the Drake London. It's got a California thing going on. I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't love he's got a little SoCal a vibe going on.
We have to relax with the slander of the
no, I'm just saying he is relaxed. That's what I'm saying. He's relaxed. He's chill, bro.
There's nothing wrong with being chill.
He's hanging loose. I get it. No, he is. He's hanging loose, bro.
And that's the end of the interview.
He's got the Billabong shorts on, at the combine, and God bless him. I don't know. I'm old school. I prefer the Walker mindset. If Burks probably knew that he wasn't going to exceed expectations, and he did it anyway. He did his best when everyone was around and everything was at stake. So when the guys are so close in terms of size and athletic ability and production and everything is just aligning so well between, it's hard to distinguish these two dudes. We're going to go with that. We're going to go with that with the tiebreaker. And I think that's fair. We have Garrett Wilson as our wide receiver 1 because he's the best combination of upside and high floor. So if you need a receiver and he's there, and Walker, and especially in single quarterback, Walker and Hall are off the board, you can feel very comfortable drafting Garrett Wilson because those picks are precious, right? You have this one pick every year. We have one first round pick unless we do trades. So treat it as precious. Take the guy that's less likely to bust, and that's Garrett Wilson.
I really like the comparison there between Drake London and Treylon Burks there. We were talking about two very unique type prospects there. One with an early breakout age there with Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown already there. Then you got Treylon Burks with that absolutely incredible breakout, that college dominator there. When you're in the SEC and you're the only thing Arkansas has in that offense, and there's not a damn thing that Alabama can do to stop you, that's pretty impressive. So you got those two things going on. What else is impressive?
Very tricky.
Is the Podfather's journey within the industry. And when we come back, we are going to go behind the grind with Matt Kelley. So stay tuned for that in part 2 of this week's Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.